Start streaming. We should be streaming. Should be moving along. And it's Friday. We wait for things to spool up. So there's nobody there. But the mic is working. And I'm here by myself. What do you start talking about if you're by yourself? This would be the podcaster's worst nightmare. Maybe it's good not to have the chat and do that because then there's nobody there. Oh, okay. Dave showed up. Good evening. I was sitting here for like almost a minute by myself, and I was like, man, hey, Glenn. Okay, so it's just, it was, wow, what happens that day when nobody shows up? All right. Gerard and Greg, Minnesota, and Dee Dee, and we have 81 degrees today. It's actually warm, so, but it is good to see. Hey, Bobby, hope everything's going well. At least you made it in here. New Jersey, head from New Jersey. But 81 degrees. We're going to get some rain Sunday and Monday. So the nice cool temperatures are about to drop again. So we got a couple days in the 80s and then we're down in the 60s. And it'll cool off and be wet and crazy again. So I think they're supposed to get 9 or 10 inches of snow up in Flag on Sunday. So yep, we're getting lots of snowfall, getting rain in between every other week, so it's nice. AZ Gold Hunter, howdy y'all. There we go. So we had a kind of a cool week or so last week. We got a lot of stuff we did. If anybody's seen the Dawn stuff and all, I didn't post any pictures. I got to get to the pictures, Instagram and Facebook and all. We were in old Tucson, so spent an afternoon there and had a really good time. Where Rio Lobo, El Dorado, Kung Fu, the Big Valley, High Chaparral, McClintock, Young Guns, Tombstone. There's a lot of films done and TV shows done there. So it was really kind of a cool day. And anybody who's down there, and everything's included outside of food. So it's kind of worthwhile. There's a stagecoach ride, a railroad, a mine. You go through. It's not, it's a gimmicked mine, but they had the mine tour. They have a bunch of shows. They have a 3-part show that goes on through the day, and then they have a stunt, the thing where they do a bunch of stunts. We might put the video up of that, of where they do the stunts. By the Three Amigos was filmed there as well, but the mission that's in Tombstone and Three Amigos and so many films, that mission there. So had a really good time. So, but we did that, and then back to business and normal stuff at hand and all. So it was kind of a quiet week. Sometimes you have a week. They're nice, 77 on the Treasure Coast. But it was like nice weather, but I had a lot of in-person online meetings. Some of them were 5-6 hours, some were 8 hours. So that kind of sucked a little. Get to go outside for a break and have a cigarette and then come back in and have to sit through the meetings. And it's all kind of software-related stuff, so it was really not exciting at all. It was kind of very monotone, just drug out. And one of the things we're doing is we're going through and creating testing scenarios. So we have to go through everything possible that we could test, which is, 300, 400, 700 items, and then go through and then give a description of them and what we want the results to be and all that. So it's just one after the other. And sometimes it seems like you're in Groundhog Day doing the same thing over and over. Please do a talk video about Jim Hatt. Jim Hatt worked where I worked kind of. He worked at another facility, but Jim worked where I worked. A lot of people don't realize that. So Jim worked basically the same company as I did. Spent 15 years as a land surveyor. Meetings can suck. I'm a no meeting guy. I don't believe in meetings. I believe you just go do your job. People just need to point out where you mess up and stuff and pat you on the back when you succeed. But generally, I think meetings, training is different, but it should be, how would you put it? It shouldn't just kind of wear you down. Yeah, but this is a necessary thing. But at the same time, I feel like they're drawing it out. We were supposed to be done with all this, and I think in October, early November, and here we are in late March, and we're still going on. Spent much time in Old Cottonwood Canyon. Speaking of Jim Hat, yeah, I spent a little time. I spent a little time everywhere. One of the things I always did was I tried to always move around the mountains. So if I read something or knew someone was in somewhere, and I'd talk to them about it, and then I would go out and look at the area, because everybody always had their what's the nice way to put it? Everybody had their theories about areas. So I'd like to go out and kind of like just explore or get a feel for it, what they were talking. Sometimes they'd say, hey, you should check this out and all, but I did that. I like to travel through a lot of them, and then the places that I really like return to and spend more time in. God, I'm trying to remember when I met Jim, because it was a long time ago. Jim was an odd person. He could be the odd duck. There are people I know did not get along with him. I know there are a lot of people he didn't get along with. We were down at the museum. I think he was still working at the museum. And they had brought the stone maps out, and they were bringing them outside. And it was like $25 per person. There's about 8 of us there showed up to look at them. And we were allowed to take photographs. So high definition photographs. And we were going to do it in the shade outdoors and then in the sunlight. And we were allowed to handle them and everything. And Jim was there. Looked like he ate the most sour thing possible. He did not look happy and stuff. I kept looking over him. I don't know if we talked. I'm thinking who I spoke to. I tried to talk to him, and he wouldn't talk that day. He could be like that. Jim and I got along though well. There was several things we corresponded and stuff and talked. I always wanted him to come out to the rendezvous, and he wouldn't. He always figured he'd stir up some kind of problem. I don't think it would have. Nobody ever did that there. That was completely different. But he donated. We must have got along pretty good and done pretty well. He donated his stone map replicas. He donated those to be raffled at the rendezvous. So we raffled those. I know Richard Robinson made the main ones. And I got the list of those, and then I think Jim did a bunch of his own and some of the Bilberry crosses, and I think of the Latin Heart. And I know where a couple of those sets are, but I don't know how many he made. I never got to ask him how many he got him. The Killer Mountains, that was the book. I think they just named the book that, and then it was always the Superstitions. Everybody called them the Soups. I never used that term for the mountains, the Killer Mountains, but they were always the Superstitions or the Soups. And I think if there's reference to that, it's probably because of the book by Kurt Gentry. So, yeah, Jim. I know Jim spent a lot of time with a number of different people. He was good friends for a time with Tom Collenborn. And then, yo, hi, Wayne. Yo, hi, Joshua. And, yeah, we worked on a couple different things quietly. We never went back and forth on forums or anything like that. It was either the phone or in person or through emails. And it was very different. I know Randy I know he made a trip or two with Jim. Jim and Sal wanted me to go a couple trips with them. I know one of them. Can you talk about the Omega? I don't even know what the Omega is. The Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I don't know. Okay, so clarity, context. But I liked Jim. I could see the problems people had with Jim. When Jim was in a good mood, it was good. And then when Jim was in a good mood, it could be rough. But I know him and Sal were pretty tight for a while. I don't know. So I knew the people that he spent a lot of time in the mountains with. Dogs just decided they needed to come in. But I knew a lot of those people and all, and I heard plenty of Jim Hat stories. And I never based it on it. I always just... I just based everything off of just our own personal interaction, which is what I did with most everybody. I would always say, yeah, I get what everybody's saying about the person, which could be good or bad, but I just kind of base it off what my interaction specifically was. And I always got along good with Jim. So, but I never had anything, maybe someday I'll talk. I tried to help him with the Bilberry stuff. We had two different... Jim was having trouble with Michael Bilberry, he wanted him to talk or find out kind of... Because there's a bunch of interviews. I have interviews with Michael Bilberry, and I knew where Bilberry was down in Casa Grande, and had talked to him, and I told Jim, I said, I don't know if he's reading your forums, I don't know what's going on, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to get him to come to the rendezvous. And I said, if you recognize him, and I warned a couple of people, I said, I'm just going to try to see if I can get him to come out and sit around. And if he gets comfortable, maybe then he'd want to talk to people. My main thing was for whether the museum, the historical society or somewhere, is if the crosses, the Bilberry crosses, I didn't give a crap if they were real or not. I just wanted the originals to be in the museum and stuff, not replicas. So I was trying to find out kind of some of the lineage for that and what he knew, but it wasn't really hard pressure. I was less about talking about that stuff and said, why don't you just come out with some people? There might be a few people you knew, you met. Tom Collenborn's out there. Why don't you just come out and hang with us? And I thought he was thinking about it, but it never really happened, and then he passed away. Has anyone ever explored Red Mountain? Well, now you can't, but I know it's on Resland, and it's hard to get permission. It's a place where they do a lot of ceremonies. I know John Ramsey's made that a big deal. I think he's still is he in prison or out of prison in Australia? Whatever's going on with him. But I've had a few people that I've went out there with that are because of the tribal land, and because I wanted to see what Ramses was talking about. I figured it was just some old mining prospects and stuff, but I wanted to be able to see it, but I didn't want to break the rules. And there's a couple people I had relationships with that I was able to kind of go out there, and I thought it was kind of a neat place, but I know it's kind of a very ceremonial place, and you shouldn't mess around with it. I just thought it was a neat place. It's a neat mountain. So and there's, I won't go into detail, but yeah, I was kind of shown less about the mining activity and more about a number of other things up there. And I felt pretty, I don't know if honored is the right word, but I felt like I was being pretty privileged if someone walked me around and talk about some of it. So it was very cool. So, but yeah, I was, and I haven't been out there for years. There was another individual that offered Frank and myself access down there and wanted to kind of along the river a couple spots. There was another place. There's some boulders that have a place that they go into, and I know where that's at too. But it's like a room they go into in these giant boulders, and inside it's kind of a bit like a kiva or something. But yeah, they invited Frank and I to kind of go out there It was kind of, the invite was for me, and I was like, I want to bring Frank along. I think he'll find it all cool, because he'd never been out there. And they were like, yeah, sure. And then that kind of fell apart because we just never communicated. I still have the individual's number and everything, and I feel bad about that because he was very nice, but he had a few areas that were good placer areas he wanted to go out to. He was indigenous. It was very cool. So, and but yeah, you almost know someone, not ask permission, but just know someone and then be respectful. Sal is quite the character. He sure got a lot of incredible stories. Sal is that, and he has a lot of incredible stories. Truth or Consequences in New Mexico. There you go. Why Jim Hatt was so upset about Jesse Capon case. Maybe Mr. Capon was too close, Minister Hatt. I didn't know. I've heard a lot of things about. Jim was out there searching for him. I know he wanted me and Randy out there. I went out on a day that I wasn't there. I don't know if Randy made it. I'm trying to remember if Randy's. I know Jim invited us all out because they were doing the grid search and they were trying to get people. And I think I was working. That was back when I was working pretty much 7 days a week. And I think it was something like that. But they went in they were in a tortilla. And I know Jim was part of the search parties and stuff. So, and then it was, 3 years later when they found the body. But I don't remember Jim ever talking about Jesse Capons much. I've heard people talk about Jim about that, and I don't really care much one way or the other. I know people always have their conspiracy theories one way or the other about all that. Jim was into tortilla and all that. There was another Dutch hunter who went over, and I was visiting someone else, and they just happened to be there. And I remember I came in the room, and we sat down, and we were talking about the Jesse Capons thing. And I was talking, kind of like, yeah, I didn't get out, but I'm going to try to get out, a couple times to help with the grids. And they told me they had tracked him up through Peters Canyon, up on Peters Mesa, and all this specific stuff. And then the trail just disappeared. So it was all this Peters Mesa stuff. And I was like, I don't think that person, to be honest, could track a big dog on muddy ground, much less knew what he was talking about. And then later we found out none of that would have been correct in any shape or form. And then later we were sitting around, this is a couple years later, and I said something about it. I guess you weren't. And then he tried to deny he ever said it. And I'm like, nah, we were sitting there in a room and you volunteered this information. Like, you knew and all. But he's one of those people, not going to use his name. But it was kind of I thought, a dick move on his part, because I don't think he'd even been out there, had anything to do with it. Greetings, Wayne. Gilgold Prospecting in San Antonio, Texas, where every day is a golden day. How long did the Dutchman have the mine before he died? Months, years? Well, it would have been years. It would have been many, many years. What did make a Dutch hunter a Dutch hunter? Okay, qualifies. Greetings from windy Prescott. Prescott's probably very windy today. That's part of the point of speculation. Did he find it when he first came to Arizona? Was early after his Prescott days? Prescott? I'm going to have to... We have a Prescott individual here, so we have to do right by Prescott. Or was it between Prescott and Phoenix, or was it after he got into Phoenix, the early days in Phoenix? We don't really know. We know 1865-66 he's in the Prescott area. 1868 he's settled in Phoenix. So there's a couple years there where he could be. We don't really know. We kind of have an idea when he left Los Angeles County, came across the Colorado, went to Prescott. So we have a kind of a timeline, but we're just not sure. The only thing we know, I know time-wise, is Julian Reinhardt both told Jim Bark, that Waltz had told them it had been at least 10 years since he'd been to the mine when he died. So when you figure it'd been about 1880 was his last trip, which kind of throws the whole Holmes thing into a swing, doesn't it? Because you start having time and, and dates and stuff, and you start going, huh? But Because what was it? The original Holmes story is Waltz had gotten sick from the last trip in the mountains, something like that. Then it was the flood, but there's a variations. But no, it's hard to say. But he knew at least. I would say it had to be around somewhere in the early 1870s. Could be the late 1870s, but it had to be around 1870 or so and further on. But then the problem is, when they first came to Phoenix, did he have a partner, or was his partner preceding this? He came, he got his property, he had a wickiup kind of building, and then he started building the adobe house and the outbuildings and all, and seemed to do well. So it's really hard to put anything on it to understand exactly when did he start showing anything. They said he paid he paid all the workers and the people that for the outbuildings and a lot of the work and shutters and stuff with gold concentrate. So we just know he'd kind of come into something. And then of course he made the return trip sometime probably it sounds like 1879, 1880 to retrieve the last cache, which kind of throws the whole Silver Chief story into bunks, because you think he would be very aware of, if not reading the papers, at least aware when he went there of a lot of the changes in what was happening in the area, and other people had been there and things happening. So that's one, unless, the one person that would know, and I've discussed this with a couple people, the one person, happy Friday, hey Larry, happy Good Friday, it's Good Friday, that is right, it is. Hey Dallas, how you doing? Could it be because Jesse Capen's a person never been in the mountains? Well, and that happens. People just pick a spot because they read stuff, and it doesn't mean they know anything you don't know. It just means that's what they read, and they just take their own stab in the dark. And yeah, people can get peculiar about stuff like that. Tortilla is a big spot in a difficult area. So, but we were on the Dutchman thing still. Yeah, so it's hard to say with Walt's, timeline. That's one of the things I've always been. But the one place the information could specifically be is with the Spangler family. They would have the original notes, the original questions, all the information that Jim Bark had, and that passed on to John Spangler. And I've always said that's probably, it was material that was used for the Bark notes, and it was material that was used for Sims Ely's Lost Dutchman mine. But because the Ely family and the Spangler family, which is Bark, remember, were still searching for the mine and still interested, they weren't going to give up anything. John Spangler even said, the Bark Notes gives you ideas, but it's not going to take anything or give anything specific away that we don't want. So there's information, obviously, they had. And I could talk about that for an hour, about a lot of little interesting things, because John Spangler did partner with Al Reeser towards the end of his time, or their last times in the mountains, and very interesting things and ways they were going about stuff. Now, Dutch hunter, what makes a Dutch hunter a Dutch hunter? Because they're looking for the Lost Dutchman mine. Is it good hiking weather? It is good hiking weather. It's it'll be cooling down, the rain will come, but the snakes are out. There's been a lot of pictures of snakes, and they look like big fat snakes. So they got through the winter. They do come out all year long, but they will start coming out. The evenings are getting warm enough. They'll be starting afternoons and evenings. Right now, they're spending time in the out during the normal day. So people are starting to find them. They're coming out, getting food, starting to move around. So that's one thing you got to be on the lookout. Like I said, a Dutch hunter is a person who searches for the Lost Dutchman mine. Stone map guys, there's those stone map guys that think Waltz had something to do with the stone maps, or it leads to mines. And those guys could be kind of Dutch hunters. The guys that are talking Jesuit treasure and that kind of stuff, those are treasure hunters. Guys that are looking for the Two Soldiers mine, if they think it's the Dutchman, they're Dutch hunters. If they think it's a separate mine entirely, or they're searching for Wagner's Lost Ledge, we tend to group everyone as Dutch hunters, but Dutch hunter is just a Lost Dutchman, a Jacob Waltz Lost Dutchman mine hunter. That's that specific. So, but we do kind of drift everything in and don't try to set up any fence or boundary of saying, well, you don't really believe in the Lost Dutchman or this or that, so you can't be a Dutch hunter. I think anyone that searches the superstitions, and I think it even qualifies people that are very interested in the history and spend a lot of time back in the mountains, they kind of end up being Dutch hunters once they know the history and so forth and all. So there you go, kind of on that. So Dutch hunter isn't like progressive. You're like the neophyte. There's not grades or anything. It's kind of like, I don't always. I think you just kind of can assume it. I always go by this, and to know like the clear idea of who's a Dutch hunter. Sorry, but I'll mention the name to several different people, and when those people say, he's not a Dutch hunter, that's when I know they're not a Dutch hunter. So if I hear Ron Feldman look at me funny and say, he's not a Dutch hunter, or Shoe says it, or Tom Collenborn was like, he never really was a Dutch hunter, that's when I kind of understood, okay, and I don't know, I never asked for the criteria. I just kind of figure, they're searching for the Dutchman or something closely related. I just assume they're a Dutch hunter. And then sometimes those people even go, I'm not a Dutch hunter. I'm a lost Jesuit treasure of the Sierra Madre, the hunter. Okay, whatever. You're a Dutch hunter. Okay. There we go. Hello, buddy. And hey, Robert. Hey, Emma. Larry, we did the hiking weather. Didn't he send his or San Francisco and then sent money to the Mideast? There was a lot of stuff. Tom, that ended up in Tom's stuff. There was letters from back east and stuff they said were fake. Julia knew where his sister lived. I don't know that. I think Bob Corbin. I don't remember who had the letter about the Wells Fargo letter or something. Kind of holes were poked in that. But one of the things was Julia did have Waltz's nieces address. She even, she was looking for it for someone so they could correspond. She said they didn't know anything. She just had the address because Waltz wanted her to inform them if he passed away, to send them a note to let them know that he had passed away. That was it. So, and she doesn't say the name or anything. And I'm trying to remember where that source is, but whether Bark and them knew that information or not, I'm sure they did, but they realized the family had no idea. There was nothing related to the family in that. Ignore the Waltz's nephew thing and all that crap. It was because why would he tell Julia, let them know I'm dead, but, don't bother to mention the nephew. Or there's nothing. That was kind of one of those urban legend things people threw in there. So, we kind of went through, but Capon wasn't really close. I don't know. That would have been a question for Jim, and Jim probably wouldn't have answered you and just stared at you, gave you that, and just looked pissed off look. All right, Ed Riley, thanks. Happy Hunting Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy Easter. Easter's Sunday. I missed your answer on the Omega on the stone map. I said clarification and context. You're talking on the stone maps? I don't think anything of it. I don't think much of the stone maps. So, one of the weirdest things is you watch Legend of the Superstition Mountains. I walk in the museum with Frank. I walk over and I said, why do you bother with these things? They're absolutely fake. And because I knew the story behind them, I knew the Tomlinson story, I knew a lot of that stuff. And I was like, there's nothing significant about this. That was a Frank thing. And then Frank's like, oh no, I have this map that's got different stuff on it. It was the original from Pegleg Tomlinson. Travis Tomlinson's grandfather. Yes, Travis made this. But then it makes no sense to me, because even then I was looking at Frank like, so he made these big stone maps to carry around based on this original paper map for what reason? And then that's when Frank just kind of looks at me and shakes his head and says, I don't get it. But I do get it. I don't understand why. It's like we're sitting there and I go, hey, I got this cool treasure map. See? And I unfold it, take it out of my pocket and unfold it and go, let's build, a 4x4 foot piece of, take a 4x4 piece of iron and let's engrave it with all the information on this map. And then we'll carry that around. It didn't make any sense. So, when you look at it in context like that, it just gets silly. Plus, Travis had carved another map like that that's still, I think, on the property. The thing with Spanish and stuff on it. It's in a book. I'm trying to remember what book. There's pictures of it online, too. But look for Travis Tomlinson carvings, because he carved a bunch of stuff out there. There's a bunch of stonework he carved, Indian heads, a bunch of different stuff. And it'll show you it's a big kind of I think it reminds me, it's much larger, but it kind of the horse priest stone. It reminds you of a large thing of that, but you can tell there was just so much. So when we filmed the show, I was like disappointed because I was like, why are we going this route? And Frank's like totally swearing. And that kind of like drifted off, and then it just got nonsensical. The stone maps always looked like cartoony. Well, one of the pictures, the horse came out of a cartoon book. The priest horse map was made in Oregon. It was separate. The trail maps he did first, and then later he carved the other two, which is why you don't see them initially, remember? People always would say, no, it's what he used to pull the other maps up with. Oh, no, he went back later and found that map. It was like all kinds of stupid stuff. And I hate crushing people. And you know what's funny is I could show you all the drawings that Travis did that show you different variations of what he was going to do on the stone maps. They're like blueprints, and you can see some, and you can look at the maps. Now the trail maps, he kind of ground the surfaces down really nice. But the horse priest map, he didn't. So you can see where they nail where he was scratching things out to do on it. And when you look at it, you can see it with the naked eye in the sunlight, even in the shade. You can see that there's all these markings on it that he didn't put. Well, the thing that's crazy is then you find these original pieces of paper that show that on it. It just, I think he thought, oh, I'm making it too busy and just decided not to do them. But he never polished those off for whatever. Are just too damn pretty to be real. So, but I read the life. There's and Travis Marlowe, one of the partners, a hard to find book, and you read that story, and then there's I'm wondering if the Museum of the Historical Society will put it out. They have the manuscript of Travis Tomlinson's version, which is a little different and little odder, but what's it called? Something Gold or Gold something, Gold Mountain, I don't know. But anyways, he had his own version written, and then it got just stuck away, and then now it's finally the family. It got out of the family, and it's out there. You can find it in the Historical Society. Greg Davis has a copy of it, and we all have copies of it now. Hidden Valley is interesting. So there's that. Oh, no, I'm going back up. So I guess we're down to Jorge Romero. I was going to talk about Jim Hatt again? Yes! Wayne, I think you misunderstood me. I am sorry. I talked to Mr. Hatt about Capon, but I was really shook on how close Capon was. Okay. Yeah, and I don't know. Jim was out there forever searching. Like I said, it's kind of one of those interesting things. Sometimes the relationships and stuff, I gloss over stuff. Jim's no longer around, but yeah, Jim worked in the energy sector, just like I do. I guess you call it energy, electrical company. And, and I was aware of it. And I think that's why we got along, is he understood where I worked. And it wasn't a big deal to me. And I knew Jim was into his own thing. And he was friends with Sal and a couple people that I got along with. And I just got along with him. I could see why. And I know Jim was into certain things. And I would listen to Jim patiently once in a while. But I always kind of played it with Jim as like, we're kind of interested in this for two separate reasons. So why don't we work together for different reasons, different goals, and see what we can do? And so I liked him. I got along fine with him. And I'm not going to sit there and argue with people that didn't or had problems with him. So I wish I would have got to know him a lot better personally, and we had more time to kind of sit around and just shoot the shit, because that's more fun with a lot of people like that. But no, and there's if you want Jim Hatt stories, there's 1,001 out there. I figured they were in those areas that from what John explained. Who's John? And there's possible. Oh, you're talking about Ramses and Red Mountain. Is that where we're at? I don't know. You have to clarify. What do you think about the Leather Dutchman map that Jake Cruzen has had? Which one is that? Because the only map that was there, but the only map was, Julia said there was Waltz's papers for citizenship. There was a deed mine. Sorry about that. I forgot to turn my phone off. There was the deed or letter from Peralta for the mine, which kind of dispels the whole Peralta thing, which Jim Bark says he saw it. And then there was instructions or something for the mine. And if Jim Bark had seen it and it never helped, I don't think it would help any of us. It wasn't on leather that I know of. I don't know what you're specifically the leather. The only leather one I know that's on leather, there's two. One of them, Travis Tomlinson made of the Julia Thomas map, which was a fictitious map that he created. That map was absolutely bogus, and I don't think that's it. The other one would be I call the Frank Fish map that Frank Fish got from the Peraltas in Mexico. And I know where that's at, so I don't think that guy has it. Al Reeser was the last person privately to have it. So I don't know what one you're specifically speaking of. The only ones I know of, I know there's two original maps out there, and I know where both are, and one of them is kind of on a leather or cowhide. But I don't know a guy named Jake Cruzen as far as attached to it. So I don't know what that thing was. I cannot remember the episode of the guy's name, but he was on your Chasing Legends show and said where all these locations in cases where gold bars were exactly. Do you have on that? Who is that? On my show? It was on our show about these, and he had these locations. I don't remember that. It sounds like Robert Kesselring, and it sounds like Lust for Gold, A Race Against Time, the film. That sounds like Robert. I don't remember anything on that. Unless, I don't know if anybody's saying the locations or is all these locations. I don't remember that at all, and I was there. It was supposedly made by Peralta and resembles the profile map and the map. Yeah, anytime we have these Spanish words and bad Spanish language maps, let's assume those are fake anyways. Eric. What about Eric? Eric. Okay. So this is this was what John explained about the mines and possible locations. I figured we're in those areas. Look at Google Maps. The rock formations. John Wilburn. I don't know. And then Eric. I don't know. DeLeal Magnuson. The other Eric. There's two other Erics on the shoe side. Sorry, I'm just trying to work through these. The guy's name, Chasing Legends show. This might so you're not. I'm sorry. I was thinking Legend of the Superstition Mountains. And he said locations in gold bars. Is that John Wayne Galloway? Is it recent? That could be him. I have a bunch of his stuff. He gave me maps and photographs and stuff of all the sites and stuff. The barge is really interesting. Have you found a spot in any northeast? I like LaBarge. Spent a lot of time with her, so I can't remember the name. It's all right. We'll work it out. I always go back and read through this stuff and see if there's something I can do. There's an article in the Territorial News. Well, you can't take that for. Did you find after your association? Do you think that the heart-shaped rocks are not clues? They just wanted me to find heart-shaped rocks. There's a bunch of rocks that are kind of heart-shaped. And there's one down by Blacktop that has actually like pinpoints on the tops, where it kind of like rounded for the heart. It's a heart-shaped rock, and it's interesting because, and I don't know because Bob Ward was in there a lot, but on the ends it's a very big rock. Someone would have had to climb up, but it looks like there's two little like sight pins or something on it. It's weird. That one's always interested me. But people, once people get an idea, then everybody starts carving hearts, doing hearts. And, most of the stuff people take a picture of and say, this is a heart. It doesn't look anything like a heart. There was a gentleman, and I've mentioned him before, that found one that was buried in a place in Whiskey Springs. And I have that heart, and it was kind of worked. I have that, and then there was the one Frank and I found down in Fish Creek, and you can see where that had been ground and worked into the shape of a heart. That one I kind of suspiciously feel had something to do with DeGrazia or Bob Ward, so I think it was purposely placed there for someone to find. Frank kind of felt there might be more meaning to it. I don't know. I don't think Julia sold maps like people think. Here's the problem. There does not seem to be one. They act like she sold hundreds, if not thousands of maps, and there's not one in existence. People have faked them. The map you see that is supposed to represent what a Julia Thomas map looked like, we have no Julia Thomas maps. So I always wonder if that was part of that whole... There was a little bit of a Holmes conspiracy to kind of badmouth or say things. And part of it was Julia running off while Waltz is dying. Reinhardt's off drunk. Julia's selling maps. She's doing voodoo. And it's kind of weird because it's all kind of disses that group. And it's more like, hey, pay attention to me because I know the real story, the real truth. So I think that's what a lot of that was about. I don't know why Julia would sell a copy of the map when she was looking. And then Gottfried supposedly stole the stuff, so she would have had to remember and draw it out again. Yeah, that's the guy. I'm trying to remember what's the guy. Man, there's too many conversations now. What are your thoughts about Bob Ward? Bob is interesting to me. I always get... What was it someone said? When you see a blaze on a cactus, it might have been something Bob Ward found. It might have been something Bob Ward created. Bob might have been genius, and he might have been lying to you. And that was some of the craziest stuff, because I realized, so I don't know how much, if anybody here at all has ever been through his writings. He was an excellent illustrator. He could draw. He did survival stuff and all kinds of stuff and plants. He drew pictures and plants and the etymology of the plants and the medicinal uses. Very smart guy. I mean, when you look at what you're like, Rick Gwynn had a bunch of the books and a bunch of his writings, and it was like, kind of threw me off. Then you look, he created his own ciphers and codes and different things and variations, and some of them have not been cracked. I got some of them, I know what some of the words are, but I haven't ever been able to figure out the key to them. He was very complex. Obviously, PTSD played a part in it. Alcoholism played a part in it. But he was extremely smart, because when you start deep diving into it, Frank and I realized the guy's got a lot of genius going on in there, no matter what you think. And he might have been crazy, but he was crazy smart too. And I was like, he was dangerous too at times. But no, every time I go through Bob Ward's stuff, and I got a ton of it, it always kind of throws me, because he did have that. He would make stuff up, and I don't know why. Sometimes it's real obvious. He made stuff up just I don't know if it was to throw people off or what it was. I don't know. And it's kind of weird. He would create things in the wilderness and then create his own stories around them. I mean, he said he found the stone maps. He said he found the Latin heart. You know, he was always trying to get into someone else's business. I don't always understand it all. And I don't know, maybe Tom Collenborn had a really peculiar sense of humor. He would tell people things and make them believe that he was telling them 100% the truth, and he was just ribbing them. Well, I wonder if that was Ward's thing too, if he just loved to rib people and drive them crazy. But yeah, I'm still trying to think of who's the guy. I'm looking back. Eric Barksdale. I'm looking to see where Eric chimed in, and I remember episode of the guy's name, Chasing Lim. Well, now, okay, so that was John Wayne Galloway. Yeah, and he was with Mystic Mountains guy. I'm trying to remember. Ralph Holder. He was partners with Ralph Holder for a while and some other guys. He's well known. He's a really nice guy. He's a really interesting guy, really nice guy. And he really wants someone to kind of work up into LaBar's that spot. But yeah, he gave me all the material, came out and visited me a few times, and we sat down. And when I can get a trip in that area, I want to kind of look at some of the stuff and verify kind of, not so much to say whether he's right or wrong, just to verify kind of what's going on there for him and stuff. Hey, Jax. Yes, we're moving along, Jax. We got a little while to go, buddy, before we go, okay? So that's that. So there's that guy. Man, I'm kind of... But the Julia map thing, I a long time ago thought, because Gottfried supposedly took it, and then Herman said Gottfried burned all the papers. But I wonder if he was incorrect, because Reinhardt, before he committed suicide, one of the things he did was he took a metal trash can and all papers, photographs, and stuff, personal items, a number of his personal items, he burned them in a trash can, and they could not figure out what it was. So I wonder if Reinhardt ended up with that stuff somehow. And since he generally had a job and lived in Globe and a little more stable, and I wonder before he died, he didn't want someone to grab that stuff and be, he was just frustrated. So he burned it all before he went and committed suicide. Someday we'll have to do that as a Chasing Legends about that last day or two of Reinhardt's. But, yeah, so if there was, why would you show it to anybody else? I've heard so many theories. People, it's so funny for something that there's, Jim Bark probably had a description of what the stuff was. People think it's the map that was on Herman's mantle. They think it's the one that was, you got to remember it was in Superstition Gold by Orrin Arnold. Which it wasn't. There's a lot of kind of like, people think they know what Julia and them, but I think Jim Bark, Sims Ely had probably the best information. And ever to get, Sims Ely stuff's out there. I don't think any of it's there. I think all that stuff's at ASU now, but the Spangler family, if they ever released or put that stuff was released, that would be interesting, because we'd probably get an answer to a lot of little questions. It wouldn't solve anything, but it would answer a lot of little questions. So you feel like the real golf on Waltz's bed, his death came the time he had, and no one seemed to like it. We'll talk about about gold has a signature. Okay, and there's always, let's remember, there wasn't a deathbed story or deathbed confession, which is, they always use that because it's dramatic. February's the flood. He dies in October. He talks all the way through. They cleaned up the gold, which was, I think, supposed to be in tins under his fireplace, the hearth. And Reinhardt dug that stuff out, and then they cleaned it up and put it in a box. Some people say it was a candle box. Other people say it was just a box. And it was placed under his bed so he would know where it was. That was supposed to go to Julia and Julia alone. And Reinhardt was very aware of that. As far as a lot of stuff, they were very aware of it. They saw it beforehand. Some of it was used to pay for things. They took care of him. So I'm sure, and they saw, and Reinhardt definitely saw it when they were going in and helping pay off the debts for Julia. So he was seeing some of it and working with Waltz on it prior to December, what was it, 1890? Or 1880, whatever it was. He was prior to that, months before that, until Waltz finally told him. So Waltz told them about the mine and explained everything in December. Then in February is the flood, and he dies in October, end of October. So when you look at the timeline, I mean, the whole deathbed thing is ridiculous. They knew a lot. They just figured he would recover enough to take them out somewhere to give them some sort of on-the-ground directions. And that didn't happen, but the gold under his bed, I've always kind of wondered, and people say when you ship gold and want jewelry made, they said it doesn't mean they use that gold. It's whatever they use. They might be using something and say, you're not there. They're saying, well, this is actually prettier. So you never know what's made of it. What was very surprising, none of those pieces, original pieces, nobody held it, which makes you curious, because if there was such the thing of, like, let's say Dick Holmes saying, I want a tie pin and I want this and I had these things made, he would have kept one of the pieces of ore to compare to, since he was having other things made. why didn't he keep one? Why didn't the family have one? Because I don't think he was truly in possession. I think possession's 9/10 of the law. Well, I don't think he really had possession. I think there's a lot of gray area there that we never will know. Everybody's dead. Unless someone finds some hidden letters or something where some of it's described. I think there's people that knew the truth, and it just didn't really matter anymore. And then what created was the split and divides and how people, who knew what. And who was the guy you told me about a while back on here that was showing you lots of pictures of rocks? Howard Hornick? Carvings of animals and faces, and you said you just couldn't see it. That was probably Howard, the caretaker at the Quarter Circle U. Howard, I would come out and I'd be like, "Hey, Howard, I'm gonna," and I'd park my Bronco, and because I'd always stop in and see him and spend a little time with Howard. How you doing and stuff. Because the courtesy, as you know, it was the courtesy of the Bacchuses allowing all of us to travel through there. But Howard was being courteous because, a lot of times I could just come through, wave, and go down, open the gate on the end of the stables, and then go out the other side and shut and lock the gate. That was all he cared about, just shut and lock the gate behind you when you go through. And Howard was a good guy like that. But I always tried to stop and see and visit because I knew sometimes he didn't have a visitor maybe the whole week or stuff. Hey, have you talked to anybody? And let him know what's going on and this and that. And but he got a smartphone, and he would take, and he rode the fence lines with the dogs and checking on cattle and stuff. And when he was out riding, he took pictures of things, and depending on the time of the day and the shadows, what things looked like. And I always never was sure what he saw, what he thought it kind of looked like, or what he believed. And it would take hours. I mean, I don't think there's a single person that ever met him that ever went through the pictures would ever sit there and say, "Yeah, I saw it all." No, Howard took tons of pictures, and there was always the cactus. I think the cactus is still there at the ranch, where he always wanted you to stare through it and ask you, "What you see? What do you see through there?" You can tell. And you had to bend down to look through it, and I was always, "Howard, while the Mexicans were short, they drilled this hole to look." And I said, "Well, what'd you find at the end of it?" "Nothing." "But what do you think is there?" He was a fun guy. I liked Howard. I don't know if he gives a crap about any of this stuff. He would always tell you what he found. I know Jack Carlson and other people found a lot of stuff because just Howard came across it. So, but that was Howard. Howard always has got a face. This. What do you think? This is a rock pointed to that. And there's people that are like that. And Howard was big time like that. Everything. I don't think he was a treasure hunter. I don't think he was looking for gold. I don't think any of that mattered to him. He just thought everything looked like something. What is your general opinion of Este Conister book? Este was friends with John Spangler. She was good friends with John Spangler, I believe. It's an interesting book. I have a lot of interview tapes, but not interviews of her necessarily. I think they're interviews of her interviewing other people. So I have a lot of audio of her talking to other people. I'm not always sure. I think she took information and kind of what she had got from John Spangler and went her own way with it. So I found it to be interesting. She is someone, and I know most people liked her a lot, and she seemed to be very articulate. I would have loved to meet her and talk with her and go through everything. But no, she was pretty close to John Spangler, I think. I believe so, and knew a lot of the information that he had. I don't know how much they ever shared, but I never heard anything of that. I do not know where her collection or anything went, and what she had. I have her book. I have several copies of her book, the different editions, and I always found it very interesting. It's one of the few places the Black Legion's mentioned and several other things, so it's interesting in that. So, kind of an interesting area if you want to be up in the Tortilla area and Tortilla Ranch area and stuff, and where she looked and stuff. Pretty easy to find the spots she talked about. So, but she was, what I heard, was a very nice lady. It's a well-written book. I like it. I enjoyed it. I mean, you can agree or disagree with someone's findings or opinion or their hypotheses, but it doesn't mean it's a bad book. I mean, there's plenty of good books, and I'm like, I don't think that's the way it is, but it's still well written and good research and stuff on it. Did you hear about the eco resort they have at the Quarter Circle U? Kind of worked that out. I talked to the caretaker there, and I won't use his name. I could use his name, but I don't like to drop the guy's name who's there currently. Like it used to be Howard and it was Dean, and because you don't want to drop the person's name so people come out and use their name when they're out there, like they're familiar with them, or hey, I know Wayne Tuttle and he said to go talk to. Yeah, I don't want any of that bullshit. But he's a good guy. He's got a family out there. They got a couple gates set up. Leave them alone. And Eco Resort, I don't know, is just, some people called it glamping and stuff. It was just, some people aren't totally maybe on board with it. Some people are, if it's some high-end thing and it helps, the family keep the ranch alive and maintain the ranch and hold on to the private property, which is a considerable amount of it, it makes it worthwhile. I don't have a problem with it. It's their property, and I don't think they're trying to ruin it. I mean, I think they're always trying to take care of things and make things better out there, so I don't think that's going to be, it's not like they're building a freaking apartment complex. Be more for the caretaker to deal with these people out there with the cattle and stuff. Back then, most mountains had no names, but I wonder, decent directions. Well, I think that's why Waltz wanted to take them in, to show them which canyon and stuff. Yeah, there might have been a name for Weaver's Needle. There might have been a couple variation names, but definitely Superstition Mountains. Yeah, a lot of the stuff, the Forestry Service and people later. I think I always told the joke. They go up and they find a guy up in the mountains, and they ask him, what's that creek? And he goes, Smith's Creek. What's that? Smith's Cove. And what's that hill over there? That's Smith's Mountain. Oh, okay. So who are you? Smith. I mean, it's just, and some of the mountains have names that, Tom, I had it, not always just good authority, but Tom wrote that Peters Mesa was named after a cattleman named Peters, which makes sense because all the mountains up there and a lot of that area is about the cattlemen, which is, Charlie Boy, LaBarge. It makes sense. Iron Mountain's after Irion. I think it's pronounced Irion, Irion. So, but it was misspelled. So a lot of it was cattlemen and the people that had been in the area and worked cattle, which Fraser Canyon. So you get it, right? Peters Mesa was named after that, but everybody, Dutch hunters forever have always said that's where the Patrashes, because they called them Old Pete and all this. It's like the most ridiculous thing. And the Patrashes, I've seen so many diaries, journals, and stuff of people they searched the mountains with. And I know where they were searching with different people, and rarely does Peters Mesa ever come into it. So I always have the problem is looking. I've never found a single journal or diary where Herman or Reinhardt was accompanying people or working with people searching on Peters Mesa. Not one. I've seen them, and I have copies of pages of where there are different areas in the mountains, but nothing definitive on Peters Mesa. So there you have that. Now, someone will argue with me, but I'll point out, just because it's in a book, don't make it true, but if it's in some guy's journal from the 30s or 40s, it has a little more validation. And I've been fortunate enough to see that. And that threw me off a lot. But I found there was a story of Reinhardt on Peters Mesa, and Tex Barkley ran him off because he was too close to the Dutchman, and Tex wanted the Dutchman. And then later I found a story that was not in a book, but something in a letter between some people, and it mentioned how Barkley had to run Reinhardt off again off of Bluff Springs because he didn't want him up there because blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, that's crazy because it was the identical story, but here it's in a letter in real time in the time period. So I'm looking at a time period letter, and it's Reinhardt in the same story, but he's on a different mountain. The book, which was written by, various just people talking, had him on Peters Mesa, which became a favorite place in the 70s and 80s. That was like the go-to, and then the 90s, and since then it's been a kind of a big deal. I had that discussion with someone recently too. But the mountains didn't have names, so yeah, Waltz would have drawn something and showed them where certain physical things were to drive in, because he said it was hard. He said, you're not going to find the camp without the mine, a mine without the camp. It was a difficult place. Matchbox wasn't Waltz, or where did it come from? Well, it came from where they sent the ore. Joe Porter sent the ore, and some people feel that different ore was used to cut the matchbooks. That's one of the theories. It came from the place that the ore was sent. So the ore was sent, Portery, But the ore was sent there. Some people believe that since the different pieces of jewelry seem to be possibly different specimens of gold. The Superstition stuff has a little greenish hue to it generally, which is a bit of the copper and silver in it, and it's very different. If you're lucky enough or know enough to find some of the gold in the Superstitions, when you see it, it does have a telltale look to it. Definitely the Eastern Superstitions. It's very, very different. And the Western is a little different than that. But we have to remember, Walt said the vein he found was really unusual. He'd never seen anything like it. And when you start taking the description and say, why would he make the description? Why would it be so detailed in that? Because I think he was trying to make the point of it's completely different. And I've always went on that basis of when analyzing any ore or anybody from anywhere, that's the first thing I look at is where that is. And I'm looking for that mineralization and exactly what he described, where he basically said it's like popcorn kernels all through it, running through the vein. And you could literally pick it with your hand. It was very easy to get to. So that was important, I think. All right, so we're at the 5 o'clock hour. We put in 60 minutes. Let's see if there's a wrap up here. Get going, because I'm hungry, man. I don't know about you guys, but I got a little while here, a couple things to do before I got to get dinner. But the matchbox did come from where they sent the ore, so it did come from the place they sent the ore. Just some people believe that different pieces of ore were used, and you can take your pick which one is right. There was, earrings, tie pin, I don't know, cufflinks, matchbox. There was a bunch of different stuff. And I've held a number of the different pieces and seen them, and I got to admit, they kind of seem to be varied. When Walt supposedly went back to get supplies in Florence, supposedly, and left Weiser, he was just on horseback, or was he was bringing the mule, I'm sure. Just curious on the time to get there and back. And that was the thing with Bark, is Bark said, if you read the Bark notes, he basically, and they're online, legendofthesuperstitionmountains.com, you can read that section. Bark thought that might have been something to catch Julia or Reinhardt maybe in a lie, or that really something interesting, but it didn't really matter. But I'm sure he took the mule with him to bring the supplies back, because there's no mention when he got back of basically the mule was missing or the mule was slaughtered, and I think that would have been definitely something included in there. But again, that's one of those things, is if we could ever see that material and it was made public, it would kind of change the context. That's why when I told the story in Chasing Legends, people see the Patrash letters. I really hoped those letters were real. And I wanted them to be real so bad, because there was a few little things dropped in there. And I thought, wow, if there's a series of like 7 or 8 letters, and some of them have some, it might not be interesting to someone else because it's not about the mine, but it might be about the history. It'd be so cool. And we could maybe be able to figure a few things out that we have questions about. And then the disappointment when I was like able to realize there's some things here that are very flawed and I know better. And then the person came clean as soon as I confronted them about it. I'm pointing out no, but I was at first thinking they were really valid, and I really wanted to get the money together and get those. I didn't care, because I thought they were going to be so invaluable, historical context, no matter what. So that kind of was rough, of that disappointment. And then the person just fessing up and going like, yeah, I was trying to play you. And I was like, man, okay, well, shit, I paid for lunch. I guess that kind of got played twice on that. Well, and that was one of the things, was no prospector would tend to look. It would be basically there was no dump, was one of the points being made. The Mexicans had dumped it down the hill and all. I've found those kind of spots before, where you can tell, you look at something and you realize there's no dump. There's no discernible dump really in this spot. Where's all the tailings? Where is everything from where they dug this hole? And they would take it down and dump it down into these washes, so it would kind of like disappear and you wouldn't really be able to tell. So there's that. I think that was part. He also said that no cowboy would find it because they couldn't ride a horse to it, because a lot of cowboys did not like getting off their horses. Good show tonight. Thank you, Bobby. It wasn't very funny like last week. See you soon. Well, Bobby, I'll try to come up with some jokes next week for you. Yeah, soon. Thank you. Have a happy Easter. Everybody have a happy Easter and a good weekend. I hope I answered every question. I tried to keep up with them. It's just kind of the order of things. When Trevor's here, which he's in a competition, they actually did really well yesterday, the group he took. So he's doing well, but he's in a competition for a few days, so he's unavailable. It's nice when he's here, kind of give me stuff and keep it kind of, I can keep the order better. That and then Tyler, really cool. Ty up in Flagstaff was asked to speak on it's a Shakespearean thing. He is being asked to speak at a convention at I'm trying to remember, Clark University in Massachusetts, which is very cool. So yeah, they're doing really well. It's hard to believe that big, tall, well, not big, but that skinny, tall kid doesn't like to talk very much, and now they're asking him to get up and speak before panels and stuff on these papers. They're doing so good. So my daughter's doing well too. She doesn't watch this stuff, but she's doing great. But no, it always helps out when one of them's here and stuff, and kind of able to kind of make sure I don't miss stuff. So I hope I didn't miss anything. Too many differences. Yeah, and I've held them all. So I've held them all. Well, not everything that I know of, but I've held a lot of this stuff. So, I always tell people, when people tell me certain things, I go, you know what? Did you freaking hold this? Did you have this? Did you hold this? I got not only pictures, I got pictures of my hand with it in it. Different things. And, I always like to run that stuff, and some of the thoughts I have like that with guys that work with a lot of gold, like Shoes and Ron, who have the Mammoth and stuff. And then, Tom Collenborn and Frank. And, you don't always, they're all going to have their own opinions that might differ somewhat, but I always like talking to them about it because it lets my wheels spin and lets me hear kind of people's different perspectives on those things. So there you go. So I'm going to get off of here. So we did pretty good. Yeah, we did good. Yeah, it did fly by. Sometimes it takes a while. And then today did fly by. So there we go. So thank you, everybody. I think that was productive. And I like doing these lives. I don't know what we'll be doing here. Trevor's going out of town, so I'll probably keep doing the lives. We got to just get some episodes for Monday knocked out. History Channel has not let me know, and I haven't seen the schedule's only a week or so out, so I don't know when the schedule for History's Greatest Mysteries will come up. And there's a couple other projects that'll be out in the future. Don't know how that'll all go. So, but yeah, Trevor's tried to put stuff together and got 1,000 other things, just like me, up in the air. So I'm just coming in and figure out we can do the lives, and no matter what. So there we go. And Susan drops in there at the very end, and so does Dale. Thank you guys. Thank you. I hope you didn't turn in late. And if you did come in late or you didn't catch everything, you can see me sitting there by myself, talking to myself, just kind of lonely at the very beginning before everybody comes in. So everybody waits till they see that I'm going to be there, and then boom, they all start popping in. So thank you so much. I didn't get a single complaint about being too quiet, so the audio must have been good today. But maybe the people that complain about the quiet audio weren't here. So everything else, though, seemed to go good. So I want to thank everybody and kind of making this all fun and stuff. You can, like I said, you can catch it up on YouTube. It'll be up on YouTube and posted, so you can get it from the very beginning. Yeah, if you don't see me live, you can always pretend. Remember that. You can always pretend. So, yes, go back and watch and just pretend. Ignore this part and then just go back and watch the whole thing, right? You won't know any different. So there you go. All right. Thank you, everybody. Everybody have a happy Easter. Have a great weekend. We'll catch you Monday on Chasing Legends. We'll catch you next Friday on another live. Everyone out there going to be 1:10 no time. Yep. Sure thing. So thank you, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll see you next week.